Hi, I'm Tim Eskew.
And I'm Amanda Stradling. We are East Valley Leader Lab, and this is our podcast, Mind and Body at Work.
Wellness, well-being, and mindfulness are trending right now as organizations try to attract and retain the best talent in this tumultuous post-COVID world. At the Leader Lab, we agree these are important concepts and overdue for being fully utilized in the workplace.
We also believe that these concepts only work when you treat the mind and body as a whole. We are excited to be part of a societal shift in attention toward the whole person. We invite you to join us as we begin to look broadly and deeply at wellness, well-being, and mindfulness in the workplace.
Welcome to Mind and Body at Work. Today we've invited a guest who's helped implement corporate wellness programs and coordinated the focus on wellness in large and small organizations, which fits right into our topic of wellness in the workplace. Our guest is Kay McDonald. Kay is principal of KM Human Resources Consulting, where she does HR consulting and executive coaching for large and small companies. Kay has over 20 years in HR leadership across multiple global industries, including names we all know, like Intel and American Express. Intel is something Kay and I have in common as a background. She's also worked with startups and smaller businesses. And Kay has shared with us that she does this work because of her passion for creating engaging, high-performance work environments.
So Kay, tell us how your career began in human resources.
Well, my educational background is in psychology and instructional design. And at American Express, I started in their training department. I developed training and through a couple of job moves ended up doing stand-up training and helping teams become more effective. And during that process, and gaining trust with employees and managers, I came to know sort of what the issues were within the teams and got involved in a lot of employee relations issues. So I started working with human resources on employee relations and then was asked to move into human resources.
It sounds like you were a natural fit for the job.
It was a good segue. And also in big companies, training tends to be the last group to hear about changes. Human resources tends to be one of the first groups to hear about it. I like to be in the know in the beginning.
Okay.
It can be more effective.
Wonderful. Do you consider employee wellness and well-being a responsibility of an HR person?
I do. It's one of the responsibilities. In fact, I've been in HR 20 plus years. It's becoming more of a core competency and a core responsibility of HR as well as management.
Okay, that's fantastic. That kind of leads into my next question. Do you think that wellness is something that is commonly taught to HR professionals, or is that something that's more of a case-by-case basis? Is that a focus that you had personally, or is that part of the career?
I don't know that it's taught per se. It might be now. It's been a while since I was studying for the HR exam. It probably is now. In terms of being taught, HR is always evolving. Employment law evolves, and you have to keep up with it. Not necessarily taught. There's lots of information out there to go research if you're interested or if you need it for your job.
Okay.
So you mentioned, Kay, that it should be part of the responsibility for HR. It should also be part of the responsibility of the leadership, the management team.
Yes.
Has it been your experience that your client managers, the ones that you're partnering with in the organization, do they pay a lot of attention to employee wellness and well-being?
Really depends on the person.
Okay.
And the emphasis that the company places on it. So if you're evaluated on that at the end of the year, and you have numbers that are being judged as an employee survey, for example, or if it's part of your to-do list to do particular wellness things, you're going to pay more attention to it. Or just some managers are naturally interested in it and naturally good at it. My last company, big global company, he had a PhD in chemistry, and he had come from a very large pharmaceutical company.
Oh,
So very analytical, right?
yeah.
He was one of the best people managers I ever worked with. And the way he did one-on-ones with his people, every month he had a template that he used that he tracked, and it was all about their well-being.
Really?
Are you under too much pressure? If so, what can I do about that? How about your relationships with other managers you work with?
Wow.
Other unacceptable behaviors? How much pressure are you under? How's your workload? And he would track all these things, and it led to a kind of conversation that you usually don't have with your boss. It's usually about deliverables.
Yes.
So
External factors.
Right.
Yeah.
and he was a role model to me on how it can be done in a systematic way, and tracked, and then it led to really different conversations.
That's great, because sometimes in the regular meetings, there's a focus on professional development, right? So we talk about your performance, your performance, your performance. Let's talk a little bit about how you could get better
Right.
at performing.
Right.
But we rarely step back to talk about, how's it really going for you? What do you need?
Right. How
At
can I
least
support
my
you?
experience has been that's not always the case.
Right. So it was, in fact, I was working with him to develop that template to roll it out. So it was it combined the analytical and the tracking piece with
Yeah.
the emotional piece and support piece.
That's great. So that's an example of what a real role model leader can do about wellness. Do you have any examples of, and of course we don't want any names or personalities, but behaviors you saw in managers that actually detracted from wellness or well-being, in your opinion?
Yeah, I've worked with managers who were really protecting their own career and their own reputation, and so would deflect projects going bad to someone who worked for them. And put so much. I had one manager, a senior leader, who said, I don't use performance management documentation to get employees out, my direct reports. I just put so much pressure on them, they leave on their own. So there's no bad reflection on them because they didn't do a write-up or anything, but
Oh, wow.
yes. So that is really bad for well-being. It causes so much
Yeah.
stress and animosity between different people and so forth.
Exactly. Kind of the opposite of what we look for in a leader, right? That person that's going to take full responsibility for everything and help their people be successful. Good examples. Have you ever had a boss or a leader of yours take an action that you felt really benefited your personal well-being?
I have. So the thing about well-being is it's very individual, right? Gallup has some statistically relevant 5 areas that they say affect people's well-being in or outside of a company. But each individual is different. So for me, I like learning. So right now I'm taking a coaching class to get certified in another coaching method. And I'm 20 plus years into my career. There's always new things to learn. And by taking it with other people, other coaches, experienced coaches, you learn from them as well as from the course content. So I've been, identified as a high performer, and actually it was offered external coaching as part of that. We want to help you get even better. You're identified as want to move forward. The coaching was wonderful. It was outside of the company, so I didn't have to worry about affecting my career. I felt like I could be more honest. And it was an investment the company was making, as well as
Wonderful.
being asked to be in a upper level management course. You can always learn more how to be a better manager. There's lots of different tools and philosophies out there. So that for me increased my engagement with the company and my sense of well-being in that company.
Yeah, they were supporting your personal growth, but of
Right.
course that benefited them as well.
Right.
And just a quick side, when you mentioned Gallup, you're talking about the Gallup poll company, right? That
Right.
publishes a lot of surveys these days about engagement and wellness.
I'd say they're the leading company around well-being. Their studies are what companies base their programs on, and their annual employee engagement surveys are based on those studies because they have statistical numbers you can compare yourself against.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, in regards to organizations attending to employee well-being, how would you say that the environment today compares to earlier on in your career?
So I think it's much more comprehensive. I was the head of HR for a small privately owned company, so I dealt with benefits brokers, and most employees don't realize the high cost of medical benefits for the company, let alone for themselves. We all know how much,
we all know how
what a big deductible we have to meet before they pitch in anything. But companies bear a big brunt of that too, and they're trying to find the right balance between providing health care that is affordable for employees and being able to make a profit because their health care costs go up every year as well. Wow. So wellness versus well-being started with companies working with their benefits broker to reduce the cost of benefits going up. So in the beginning, remember back when, companies would have step programs, want to get people out, count their steps, make it a contest, make it part of what the company is supporting. And annual wellness checkups. Most big companies now provide some incentive for employees to get an annual wellness checkup. Some companies are going above and beyond, saying if you get their checkup, you get your blood test results, your blood pressure, your weight, all that. Some companies are offering incentives to improve that.
Oh,
great. A lot of employees are saying that crosses the line because that's my personal health information. So companies have to be really careful. It gets a little, some companies, some that Tim and I have worked at, are offering incentives to lower your cost of your premiums if you show that you're improving your health. To do that, you have to give some of your own medical information. So there's HIPAA laws, privacy laws. So it's a fine line. I understand why companies are doing it. It's a fine line there. And to the wellness, the physical part is just one part of well-being, which is your mental and mental health, how your financial health,
even social connections.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, the number one question in the Gallup poll the biggest determiner of happiness at work, believe it or not, according to Gallup, 2 different surveys now, is do you have a best friend at work?
Oh,
That's
wow.
the number one predictor of satisfaction at work.
I thought it was, do you feel like your boss supports you? But that was at one time, and it's probably evolved. Yeah.
And so I've seen that. It's an odd question to ask, but I've seen it in the last 3 companies I've worked with. That company's on their annual employment survey. That question's on their engagement survey.
So if I understood that correctly, the wellness movement in organizations really began with the companies that offer these services, and the way to get more affordable programs as a company was to create these incentives for people to be healthy.
Right. Which does benefit people as well.
Yeah.
It's just, it's also a financial incentive for companies to do.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. It's good when those things come together, right?
Yes.
When it's to everybody's benefit to do something good.
At the Leader Lab, we talk a lot about how a healthy body it doesn't just impact your health insurance costs. It also impacts your productivity, how often you can show up at work. It impacts the way you are interacting with other people at work and your productivity, and your body influences every part of you. When our title, Mind and Body, it's really mind and body are so connected. So that's just a really important, the body plays into everything, I think.
Absolutely. And that's really changed over my time in HR, 20 plus years. That acknowledgement that it's not, giving people time off to exercise, to, pay for their gym membership is much more
Yes.
common now, realizing that, healthy people are happier, they're more focused, and they produce better. And they have better relationships because they're not so stressed.
Yes.
When we talked before, you were mentioning that you worked for a large global corporation based in Sweden, and you helped roll out their was it a wellness or well-being program or both?
Well-being. Hmm.
Okay. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so they developed 5 pillars, and they had HR was responsible. It was developed at the corporate level. HR is responsible for making sure, developing actions to meet the goals of those 5 pillars. And managers were responsible for reporting out what they did as well. So tracking, having measurable, it's nice to say we want well-being, but unless you have specific goals and you track it, it's not necessarily going to go anywhere. And managers may not take it seriously as one of their responsibilities. It's easy to push it off to HR or corporate, but until
Yeah.
you identify specific behaviors that you want to see. So one of their pillars was physical well-being. One was mental. One was career development. And so there are actions under each of those
Oh, wonderful.
that we had to report out on. It makes it more concrete. Some of the actions seem small, but they may be important to employees. For example, under physical, one of the actions was provide fresh fruit daily for employees. These were manufacturing employees, working on the floor, heavy machinery kind of
Oh,
things.
wow.
So you would think that wouldn't be a big thing. It was so to reduce costs. Their general manager looked at stopping that fresh fruit. They got so much pushback from employees. It turns out, we didn't know, but the thing the employee liked the most was having fresh bananas daily. Because it was a grab, and you could grab it in the break room and go eat it wherever, and it was easy, and you didn't have to buy chips from the vending machine or something.
Yeah.
And so that who knew? We would not have known that that's what they enjoyed the most. That was really meaningful to them. So by tracking and reporting out outcomes, it helps you do things that's important to employees. It might be important to the company. If it's not important to the employees, it's not going to improve your wellness, well-being.
Good point.
It's funny you mentioned the bananas, because I remember they did a similar program at Intel at one point. I don't know if you were there at that time. And they would bring in copious amounts of fruit, and it would all disappear no matter how much they brought in. And they suspected some of it might be going home.
People
And
were
this,
taking- yes.
this was in the white collar part of the
Yes.
the organization, where people
Really?
probably could afford to buy their own fruit. It was just a funny, unintended consequence of the fruit program.
Yes, I've had that at small companies. Provide, buffet, and saw someone taking double, and I asked her about it. She said, well, I'm taking some home to my husband. He really likes this. And I thought about that for a minute. I thought, that makes her feel good that she's being taken care of and her family's being taken care of.
Yeah.
I'd rather allow her to do it. And most people didn't do it, and feel good about the company than put
Yeah.
a stop to that.
Yeah. It can tie back to well-being in a way.
Right.
Yeah. Got to weigh the costs and benefits. How about you mentioned the mental, what were some activities that were recommended for that?
A lot of courses were offered, either sort of formal ones or call in for virtual. Lots of vendors. There are a lot of vendors out there around the well-being. In fact, most healthcare companies that are providing the medical benefits have that as part of their offerings, and we'd make those available.
So they'd be courses in improving your well-being, or courses that get you doing healthy things?
Smaller, yes. I remember we had our benefit broker came in, or it was a virtual meeting, and talked about supplements. Are supplements actually effective? And the
Okay.
pros and cons. It was very interesting and controversial, but it was a good thing for employees to think about, that their company was taking interest in their health in that way.
Oh, absolutely.
It also gets employees talking to each other about, do you take supplements? Do you think they work?
Yeah. Starts to change the conversation around the water cooler a little bit if it's done right. You mentioned the importance of having measures in place. So we're talking about some of the measures and activities that were in place to encourage managers to do specific actions. Do you know, were there measures of the outcomes? Were there measures of people's, were you guys doing surveys around well-being, or how did you handle that?
Yes, so the annual employee engagement survey had questions around that. So it ties into it. It's not, once a year isn't really soon enough. So one company I worked with had I think this was very effective, quarterly surveys, or some did it even more often. They were email surveys, and there were only 2 or 3 questions. It was just a touch point to see
nice.
what was working and what wasn't. You can over survey people, and they just aren't going to play. But if you make it just 1 or 2 questions, sometimes it gives people a feeling that you care, that you really want their input, and they're willing to answer 1 or 2 questions in an email real fast. And those are easily aggregated and you can report out on. Other ways are just to talk to people, In your one-on-ones with your employees, ask them those key questions and keep track of it to see if the stress is reducing, if the work overload is reducing. If in global companies, I supported Asia, I would have staff meetings at 1 a.m.
Oh, sure.
And and I would still be expected to show up at work by 8, because people don't know what you're doing when you're not at work. So it was more of a presence thing, Was she there at 8? Or she wasn't. No one said, well, she was in a staff meeting from 1 to 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
Talk to your employees one-on-one to find out if they're stressed. When I talked to my son, I told him I was talking about well-being. His immediate reaction, and this is common for a lot of people, so I kind of laughed when he said it, well, you wouldn't need well-being programs if they would stop overworking us. My son's a research scientist.
Okay.
He's a cancer researcher in a university hospital.
Wow.
And he feels that way. Of course, he had just gotten off 7-day works because they were putting together a new grant proposal, which is big when you're in research. But that is sort of the initial reaction. The company's the one causing the stress. If they would just stop causing it, my well-being would skyrocket. It's not that simplistic, but I think we have to be careful in the wellness industry of, particularly inside companies. It looks like we're talking from both sides of our mouth. We're the ones applying the pressure, and now we're saying, but you should be happy. And, we have to balance that.
Right. And what are we doing as an organization that's assisting the well-being versus just pushing for more and asking you to be happy while you're doing it? Yeah. Yeah, that's a good example you just mentioned of with your son, and they just came off a 7-day a week. How long were they doing that? Working 7 days a week?
Well, the other part of it is, it's a good point. My son gets 3 or 4 weeks of vacation. And he can roll over 1 or 2 weeks. He regularly loses vacation because he doesn't take it. He always rolls it over. Because he likes what he does, and he's really into it, but still he's feeling pressure. Part of it, I think, in training people is they have to own it themselves. No one can own your own wellness or well-being. You have to make that a priority for yourself, which I keep telling my son.
Absolutely.
It's different when you have pressure from other people versus your own pressure driving you to work more.
Yeah.
And
that's that's a lot of that's part of what we get in our embodied leadership programs is, one of the most fundamental things is a lot of people are not great at saying no.
Right.
And one of the key things for taking care of your own wellness is saying no when it's really not appropriate to take on something more or that particular thing. And again, what a lot of people aren't aware of is the capacity to say no starts in your body. We think of it as just a language, just something I'm going to say. But if your body isn't prepared to decline, then you're not going to be able to do that.
It's going to come out in a way that's very easy for someone to just push past.
Yes.
Looking back, are there any lessons learned from these experiences that might help other organizations attempting to address employee wellness or well-being?
I would suggest Gallup their original survey was some time ago, but they just did another one in 2021 and produced a book. It's a great book. It has lots of information to ground your program in, whatever you decide to put together. So make it grounded in research so you can sell it to your leaders of the company. They want to, and monitor it, talk to your employees, see what's working and what's not. It's different for every person.
Great. So get feedback, use the research.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard you saying earlier, track things, like find measurable growth areas.
Right.
Yeah, that's great.
So in your consulting, has this, because we've talked about how this is wellness and well-being seem to have become more and more of a focus lately. Does that change any of the services you offer or how you approach them?
My clients tend to be small businesses and startups. So it's not usually the first thing on their radar. However, I was brought in to help a startup because they were doubling in size from 15 to 30, right? So, but they had the same issues that an Intel has in growing, because doubling in size is big for anyone. It disrupted all the relationships. People were getting new job titles and sometimes new duties. So the same kind of change management things needed to go on with them that happens at a big company. So was well-being on their list of things they wanted me to help them with? No, but as I talked through with them, their new org structure and duties, I talked to every employee and gave feedback about how they were feeling. And a lot of that had to do with well-being, whether it was their job duties and title, how they worked with other people, or the amount of work. And so I do think whether they use the terminology or not, well-being or wellness, it increasingly plays a part. Particularly with, you're trying to retain and grow employees. They have lots of other companies to go to that advertise about their well-being and wellness programs. So you want to retain employees by, even if you don't call it that, have programs in place to let employees know you care about their personal life and their career. And I remember when I interviewed for my first management job way back then when I left American Express, as a single mother with a 4-year-old, I had like 10 interviews, flew to Chicago before they, all the people in Chicago asked me how I was going to work being a single mother. Those questions are illegal. Yeah. Those questions are illegal, but back then it didn't stop them from asking them, this is a startup, new division. How are you going to handle that? What are you going to do for childcare? And then before they knew I was a single mother, they asked if I was married. Are you married? Do you have kids? And so,
I remember being asked similar questions in job interviews before. I remember I had a position that suddenly disappeared when I was pregnant. And so then I went out to quite a few other interviews that I knew I was like very safely qualified for, that was right in line with what I'd been working in. And they just, looked at my belly and they're like, what's your plan about this situation? And I'm like, to work for you. Like, that's my plan. I thought it was interesting that they thought they could ask that. But
It's hard when you're asked that in an interview and you want the job to not answer. But I understand it. I had an employee working for me who got pregnant with twins while she was working for me and wanted all sorts of accommodations during and after. And I thought I had to really talk to myself about that. It was hurting my department. She was a trainer. And I thought, well, wait a minute, I know what this feels like. So but she expected a lot of accommodations. There is a balance between what the company needs to survive, to provide jobs, and what the employee needs to stay.
yes, I love that word has come up a few times, balance. And I think as long as you're leading with care and they know that you really care about them, and you also care about the goals of the company,
Right.
and that you are managing both of those things, then I think you can find some harmony there.
Again, talking to people,
Yep.
helping them understand.
Yeah, we're focusing on well-being not because it's the only thing that's important, but organizations have focused for so long around, how do we be more productive? How do we be more profitable? And that's okay, but we can't ignore the well-being aspect of it. And it just seems like more and more these days, it's coming up as an issue that companies are recognizing they need to do something about. It's becoming a business issue.
Right. And so I think it's not, the driver is with businesses always money, right? So why the Gallup data is so impressive is you can show by statistically valid measures that having employees that are more healthy, that are happier at work, directly positively affects your profit.
Yep.
And when you can tie those two together, then companies are all in.
Yep. Believe it or not, we've used up most of our time for our interview today, Kay. This has been great. I wanted to give the opportunity to share anything else you'd like to about wellness, well-being in organizations. Anything else that we didn't cover that you'd like to get out there?
No, I'm just happy that it is a topic, that more people are paying attention to it, that there is a balance between, hiring and retaining employees, keeping them, and profit. And that's the balance that, we're all looking for. And I know you all are doing things on the well-being side.
Yep.
And maybe someday we'll cross paths. Actually, Tim and I talked about bringing in some of your work into the last company I worked for.
Yeah. We've been those LinkedIn exchanges kind of led to us getting to this point of coming together on this. So hopefully that will continue.
Yes.
If any of our listeners want to find out more about you and what you do in your career, where can they find you?
On LinkedIn. It's probably
Okay.
the best thing right now, yeah.
Great. So they can contact you on LinkedIn. Okay, well, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for being here for our first interview on Mind and Body at Work. We were so thrilled to have you. You shared some very valuable information.
Thanks for asking me. It was a pleasure meeting you and talking to both of you.
Yeah. All right. For our listeners, we will have a new and exciting guest next time. So stay tuned and we will see you later. This has been Mind and Body at Work.